Okay, in this lecture, we will discuss mammalian endocrine system with reference to men. What kind of different glands are present in our body, and what kind of secretions are released from these glands? There are almost 9 glands present in our body, right? And these glands secreted various hormones or secretions which play a very important role in our body activities, right? Number one, the first gland that we considered it as gland, otherwise it is a part of the brain, we have discussed it, that is the hypothalamus. Remember, this is the part of which brain? Forebrain, midbrain, or hindbrain? If you remember, hypothalamus is the part of the forebrain, right? This is considered as gland. Why? Because it secretes releasing and inhibiting hormones or factors, right? Hypothalamus is responsible for release of, you can write it with me, releasing and inhibiting hormones, or we can call it factors, right? So hypothalamus basically is responsible for two type of secretions or hormones, or we can call it factors, that is releasing and inhibiting hormones or factors. As your name shows, these factors are responsible for the release of the other hormones from our body, or they can inhibit or stops the secretion of the hormone. Under the influence of hypothalamus, different hormones are emphasized or get started the release or secretion, and it can also be stopped by the action of hypothalamus, right? In addition to this, it also releases ADH, that is hormone, and oxytocin. This is also another hormone. The ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone, right? So hypothalamus is part of brain. So this is the location from where the secretion is released, right? Then number 2, which is called as pituitary gland, also called as hypophysis, and commonly called as master gland of the body. It was previously considered as the master gland of the body because it was believed that the pituitary gland is responsible for the regulation of all the other hormone secretions, right? But in the new research, it is found that pituitary gland is also under the influence of hypothalamus, right? So the pituitary gland is a pea-sized gland which is present where? It is present at the, what is the location of the pituitary gland? Base of brain, base of the brain, the lower part of the brain, right? Okay, from the pituitary gland or hypophysis is divided into two parts, two different parts, that is the anterior lobe, anterior pituitary lobe, and posterior pituitary lobe. Okay, there are two parts, anterior pituitary lobe and posterior pituitary lobe. First, we will discuss the different secretions from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Okay, anterior pituitary lobe is also called as, it is also called as adeno hypophysis, The posterior lobe is also called as neurohypophysis. Just wait a minute, I think it's getting blur again. Let me check. Okay. I was telling you anterior lobe is also called as adenohypophysis, while the posterior lobe is called as neurohypophysis, right? Now from this lobe, the interior lobe, from the interior lobe, there are multiple hormones which are secreted. Number one, TSH, TSH, or it is called as the full form of TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone, right? TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. What is the function of TSH? It regulates the function of our thyroid glands. As its name shows, it is thyroid stimulating hormone, so it regulates the thyroid gland. Then the next hormone that is secreted from the interior lobe of the pituitary is ACTH. ACTH, it is the full form of the ACTH is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Yeah, it's a longer name. ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and it is responsible for the regulation of adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex, it is related to the kidney, right? Then the another hormone which is secreted from the interior lobe of the pituitary gland is FSH. The full form of FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone. It is responsible for the regulation of gonads, the male and female or cells or parts. Then LH, that is luteinizing hormone. Again, it is associated with the regulation of gonads. The last one is there are two more hormones that are secreted from the interior lobe of the pituitary gland. STH, or it is called as GH, the growth hormone. STH stands for somatotropin hormone, right? This STH means somatotropin hormone, while GH means stands for the growth hormone, right? As its name shows, it is responsible for the regulation of the growth in our body, growth of bones and our tissues. The last one is prolactin. Prolactin, which is responsible for the milk production in mammary glands of the female. As we are studying the mammalian endocrine system, right? So the prolactin is responsible for the milk production in mammary glands. So I will do a quick recap. The master gland or pituitary gland has two lobes, that is anterior pituitary lobe and posterior pituitary lobe. It is also called as adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. First, I have discussed the secretions or hormones of the anterior lobe, which includes TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which regulates the thyroid gland. Then ACTH, the adrenocorticotropic hormone, which regulates the adrenal cortex. The next FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone, which regulates the gonads. Then LH, which is luteinizing hormone, which regulates the growth of, which regulates the gonads again. Then STH or GH, that is the somatotropin hormone or growth hormone, which is responsible for the STH and GH, which is responsible for the growth of bones and tissues, right? Then the prolactin, which is responsible for the milk production in mammary glands, right? Now the second part, the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Posterior lobe. It also secretes very important hormone that is called as ADH, that I have also discussed earlier in the previous meeting. ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone. This hormone is basically responsible for the reabsorption, very important function, that is the reabsorption of water in our kidneys, right? Then there is another hormone which is oxytocin. Oxytocin is responsible for basically two functions. It has two regulations. Number one, it is responsible for contraction of uterus in labor. During the delivery of the baby, oxytocin is released so that the uterus contracts and the baby could be delivered, right? Oxytocin also starts the release of milk. Release of milk. Remember that the production of the milk, for the production of the milk from mammary gland, there is prolactin, while the oxytocin is responsible for the release of the milk from that mammary glands, right? Okay, here the pituitary gland is complete now. Next, number 3, that is thyroid gland. Thyroid gland. What is the location of thyroid gland? It is present Okay, the thyroid gland is present at the base of the neck. Base of neck. And what is the secretion from thyroid gland? It secretes T4, that is the thyroxine hormone, and T3, which is triiodothyroxine. Right? Thyroid gland secretes T4, that is thyroxine, and T3, that is triiodothyroxine. And in addition to this, there is another hormone or secretion, that is calcitonin. Okay, T4 and T3, these two secretions basically control our body's metabolism. Control body metabolism, right? While the calcitonin, it is responsible for the excess calcium deposition in our body, excess calcium deposition in our body. right? Thyroid gland, which is located at base of the neck, it secretes T4, T3, and calcitonin. T4 and T3 are responsible for the control of the body metabolism, while the calcitonin is responsible for the excess calcium deposition in our body or bones. Okay, now number 4. That is parathyroid gland. Now, what is the location of parathyroid gland? It is present adjacent to the thyroid gland in your neck, right? Adjacent to thyroid gland. Parathyroid gland secretes PTH. It secretes PTH, which is the full form of PTH is parathyroid gland hormone. Parathyroid hormone. And what it regulates? It maintains the calcium level in our body, right? Parathyroid gland, which is present adjacent to the thyroid gland in our neck, and it secretes PTH, that is parathyroid hormone, which maintains the calcium level in our body. Now number 5. Pancreas. Pancreas. Where pancreas is present? It is, we have studied in the first year the digestive system, remember? So it is present along the digestive system for your memory, or you can link it like this. Pancreas plays very important function in our body's regulation of the glucose level. If you remember, we have studied it in previous classes. So the pancreas, it secretes the glucagon and insulin, the two most important secretions of the body. Okay, the glucagon and insulin, both of these secretions regulates the blood glucose level. But what is the difference? How glucagon is different from insulin? They both regulate blood glucose level, but the glucagon regulates the blood glucose level when the blood glucose level decreased. Then it will maintain the blood glucose. If your blood glucose level is decreased, the glucagon will come in action. In contrast, insulin, when your blood glucose level is increased, when your blood glucose level increased, the insulin will come in action, right? So pancreas, which is associated with our digestive system, it secretes glucagon and insulin. Both regulates the blood glucose level in our body, but the glucagon activates when the blood glucose level is decreased, and the insulin activated when the blood glucose level is increased. Now number 6, adrenal gland. We have studied in the chapter homeostasis, remember adrenal gland, where they are situated? They are present on top of our kidneys, remember? Okay, the adrenal gland has two parts: adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. Adrenal gland, which is present on kidney, it is divided into two parts: adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. The adrenal cortex, it secretes corticosteroid hormone. Corticosteroid hormone, which are of 3 types: 1, 2, and 3. First one, cortisol. The next, aldosterone, aldosterone, and the third one is androgens, androgens. This is very important that adrenal cortex part of the adrenal gland, it secretes the corticosteroid hormones, which are of these, which is consist of these three hormones: cortisol, aldosterone, and androgens. All these three hormones have different regulations. Like cortisol basically involved in the glucose metabolism, right? While the aldosterone is involved in the reabsorption of the different ions like sodium and chloride ions in our body. While the androgens, these are called as sex hormones also, they are responsible for the male and female characteristics in human beings. The male and female characters are developed because of the presence of this hormone, androgens. Now, the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla, it secretes two type of hormones: epinephrine, adrenaline also, it is also called as adrenaline, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. These two hormones are very important. It comes in the reasoning question. These two hormones are called as emergency hormones. Emergency hormones. Why they are called as emergency hormone? Because the epinephrine is responsible in the conditions like fight and flight condition, while the norepinephrine is also involved in this process, but the other function of the norepinephrine is to maintain the blood pressure during this condition, maintain the blood pressure of the body. Now, number 7. Number 7, thymus gland. Thymus gland is located in the upper part of our chest, upper part of our chest, right? Thymus gland, the location of the thymus gland is upper part of our chest. It secretes the thymosin, which helps develop the T cells, the defense system of our body, right? Thymosin develops the T cells, the leukocytes. Now number 8, that is pineal gland. Pineal gland, they are present in brain. It secretes melatonin, and melatonin is responsible for the regulation of growth and development of the gonads. Development of gonads, the male and female reproductive parts. Now the last one, that are gonads. Gonads are the reproductive parts in male and female. So it is divided into two, that is testis, the male reproductive part, and ovaries, the female reproductive part. This is the sign to show the female, and this is the sign to show the male character. Okay, testis, it secretes testosterone hormone, while the ovary, it secretes estrogen and progesterone. Right? As testosterone is secreted from the male reproductive part, so it should be responsible for the regulation of the male characteristics. or development of the male characteristics, while the estrogen is responsible for the development of female reproductive system in our body, right? And progesterone, it is responsible for the maintenance of uterus. Uterus is a part of the female reproductive system which carries the baby during the pregnancy,